Welcome to Neutral Voices and Your Mental Health Matters. My name is Mildred, and we are sponsored by Our Neutral Voices. And tonight with us are, ladies, welcome.
Thank you.
Can you introduce yourselves, please?
Yes, I'm Miss Tamara, registered nurse and mental health counselor.
Crystal, licensed mental health counselor.
All right.
Hi, and I'm Robin, licensed mental health counselor.
Good evening, ladies.
Good
I'm
evening.
so excited to be here once again to talk about mental health. And tonight, for a lot of parents out there, I know when I got the topic, I was excited
Yeah.
because school is around the corner and
Yes.
it's children and depression.
Yes. Yes.
So we're going to talk about some signs and symptoms,
Mhm.
some peer group changes,
Yes.
which that is new to a lot of parents,
Mhm.
and also what parents can do
Yes.
for seeking some kind of help.
Yes.
So let's get started. I wanted to mention a few statistics. It's important for us to understand what we're talking about.
Yes.
And Indiana's suicide rate has been higher than the national average since 1999. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for Hoosier teens.
Wow.
And more than 1,000 Hoosiers have been lost to suicide every year since 2016. And Indiana is in the top 10 of the United States, showing the largest percentage increase by deaths from suicide among 10 and
Yeah.
24-year-olds.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I wanted to mention suicide is because I believe that if something is not addressed,
Yeah. Yeah.
it can get either to
Yes.
suicide, drugs, addiction. There's a list of things. So let's talk about some of the signs and
Yeah.
symptoms.
Yeah. Most definitely.
So who wants to take that first? Miss Crystal?
Yeah, so some of the signs that you may see in your child that may be a little bit different when it comes to symptoms of depression. You might see them isolate a little bit more, staying in their bedroom, don't want to be out with the family, don't want to be around their friends. You might also see them sleeping a lot more or not sleeping at all. Another sign that you might look for is irritability. Of course, we have our teenagers. Some of it's teenager stuff, but also there could be something a little bit more severe when it comes to the irritability. Some other signs and symptoms that you
I was
guys can
just-
think of?
Yeah, I was just along with your thoughts. I was just thinking sometimes you got to be careful when that sadness
Yeah.
looks like anger.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. So sometimes those are underlying issues as well as unmet emotional needs.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
So those are things that parents need to address, and that's where those conversations with our children come in.
Yes, and
One
it-
of the things that I noticed with my teenagers as they were growing up, it was physical complaints.
Mhm.
Stomach aches,
That's a big one.
headaches.
Yeah.
Mhm.
During that time of the month,
Yeah.
it was more severe
Yeah,
than
yeah.
most months.
Yeah.
So that was a trigger for me. So
Okay.
to look into it, what else was going on? Also, trouble during events or
Yeah.
activities at home with friends, like you mentioned,
Yeah.
withdrawal,
Mhm.
Right.
feelings of worthlessness and guilt.
Yes.
Sometimes kids can't concentrate
Right.
That's a big one.
because they're anxious, and that's a mental health,
Racing
right?
thoughts.
Racy
That's right.
thoughts.
Right.
That's right.
And I would say, getting back before the teen years, we need to look at those children too. A lot of times we don't want to address the depression, possible depression and behavioral issues with the younger kids, but that's
Yeah.
happening a lot. And then we've had young kids as young as 5
Yeah.
who have attempted suicide, some as young as 8 who have completed that mission of suicide. So we have to address not just the teenagers, but also the younger kids and see what we're missing as far as connecting with them emotionally
Yeah.
first and then physically to make sure they're balanced correctly in the mental state as well as their overall physical health.
Yeah, very true.
So I was looking during research, and one of the questions was which children get depressed, because we're talking about children of all ages, not just teen, adolescent,
Right.
but those in elementary school,
Yes.
preschool, because the age is getting younger and younger. And one of the things that I read was up to 3% of children and 8% of adolescents in the U.S. have depression. The condition is significantly more in boys under the age of 10. which surprised me.
Yeah.
But by the age of 16, girls have a greater
Right.
incidence of depression.
Mhm.
So that was surprising for me because at a young age there was some signs and symptoms with my son
Mhm.
that we thought was a learning disability,
Wow.
Mm.
and they categorized it as a mental
Yeah.
disability. You know,
Mhm.
so a lot of times when you're a parent, it's important for us to advocate
Yes.
for
For the
our
kids.
Come on.
children.
That's right.
You know, just because we, send them off to school for 8 hours a day
That's
and we
right.
trust these teachers,
Yeah.
these are our children.
Yeah.
And we as parents want the best, I would
right.
hope,
That's
for
right.
our
For
children.
our children.
So one of the things that I learned was to communicate, open the lines of communication with the teachers.
With the
Yeah,
teachers,
that's right.
as well as educating the parents.
Mhm.
What we see a lot these days is a lot of parents are not raising the kids. They're
That's
putting them in
true.
front of devices,
That's
Mhm.
true.
and media is unfortunately raising a lot of the kids not knowing how to handle their emotion or process their emotions.
Mhm.
And so that to me is a table or topic for discussion
Mhm.
because we're missing that.
Mm.
And a
Yeah.
lot of that emotional connection comes from home. It
Mhm.
should start at home.
It should.
Yeah, it
It should start at home, and that's what we need to start advocating for.
That's right.
And then advocating for the kids when they're at school,
That's right.
because we don't want to have another cycle or another generation, because we did have a generation of medicated kids
Mhm.
that were going through school as zombies.
Mhm.
And we mentioned that before.
Yes.
And we don't want another generation stuck on
Right.
just medicating the kids just to push them through the system.
Yeah.
One
not
of the
healthy.
things that I noticed in the school system as my children were being raised is the absence
Mm.
of parents.
Yeah.
Parent-teacher conferences.
Right.
And what I learned from a professional teacher was that she mentioned a lot of parents are coming from other countries. So there's a language
It
barrier.
is.
So it makes it very difficult for them to advocate, especially children that are coming from other countries.
Yes. Yes.
Wars and, that's trauma
It
that
is.
is not being addressed. Just because you relocate a child doesn't mean
Right.
that trauma is not following the child,
Good
right?
point. Good
Unspoken
point.
trauma.
Bipolar disorder is more common in adolescents than in younger children, it was reported. But bipolar disorder in children can be more severe in adolescents. It also happens with or by hidden attention deficit disorder. And that's one of the things that, a lot of teachers are quick to say
Yeah.
your kid has ADHD
Real
Get them on
quick.
some medicine.
and get them on some medication as opposed to trying to figure out.
What the issues are as far as
Yeah.
learning. So you have children that have difficulty reading,
Mm.
and as they go to the next level,
Mhm.
that kid is going to tend to act out
Right.
because they can't read. They
That's
might be labeled as the class clown,
Mhm.
if you will. But if you don't address, like you said, the basics of the learning, the
That's
reading,
right.
the education portion, and again, that part starts at home. You can't wait for teachers
That's
and
right.
the school system to raise our kids. We need to do that at home before they even start preschool.
So, for our parents, those parents that feel that they are not educated enough or that they don't know enough of something, is there a resource for those parents that want to educate themselves on various mental illnesses or where they can sit and talk as a group and kind of discuss issues that they're dealing with?
Yeah.
Like a support group. Is there something like that here in Fort Wayne?
Well, I do have that option
Yeah.
in my facility, which
Okay.
is CM Heart to Soul.
Mhm.
And I think you guys have the contact information. We'll have that on the website, I believe.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes, we do have like the parenting skills. We can do that as a group. We can do that individually. And I know Miss Crystal and Miss
Yeah.
Robinson also have their resources as well.
Yeah. So we have the Society of Black Mental Health Professionals, and what we're known for in the community is educating, training. Come and see these trainings and get educated on resources when it comes to what does depression look like, anxiety. There's so much that's going on with our kids, and we want parents to come to these things because again, how would you know if you don't know? You gotta want to know.
Yeah,
And
wanna
so you
know.
can't expect the schools to fix or come up with solutions. Again, you have to advocate and speak for your children.
For your children. And I will say,
Mhm.
don't let money be the factor of
Thank
you
you.
not
That's
getting
right. That's
the
right.
assistance, because I mean, the resources are out there. It's just a matter of reaching out.
That's it. There's no shame in that. No
Okay.
shame.
So, closed mouth don't get fed, in other words.
Exactly.
Point blank.
So,
Point
if
blank.
you are out there and are in need of some help, we will
Mhm.
have CM Heart to Soul, as well as some other information for those who would like to reach out. You can come on our Facebook page,
Yeah.
Neutral Voices, and get that information. One of the other things that was on our list to talk about was the peer
Yeah.
group changes.
Mhm.
A lot of people don't know what that is. Can one of you kind of touch bases and give us a general explanation as to what that is?
So when you're talking about the depression or seeing the
Mhm.
signs of depression, um, we need to be taking a look at, are they changing their groups of friends? That's
Right.
basically what it is.
Mhm.
Are they changing who they're hanging out with?
Mhm.
Are they changing the social media contacts and
That's
all that?
right.
Because sometimes kids are at stages where they want to
Fit in.
feel
Fit in.
feel like
Yeah.
they belong, and
Mhm.
that's natural for the teens, especially the preteens.
Mhm.
They want to feel like they belong. They're trying to identify their independence
That's
away
right.
from parents.
That's right.
So that's important to know, I guess, who your kids are hanging out with and
Mhm.
what they're doing. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
you need to give them their space, but there's a limit to that because
That's
they're
right.
still children, and we still need to guide them. And
Mhm.
then you mentioned, excuse me, about the girls' numbers as far as the depression went up
Yeah.
at 16. We also need to take into consideration, so they're going through their cycles or
Mhm.
PMS and what have you.
That's
So
right.
Hormones.
yes,
Mhm.
and they need to know about that. They need to know about that before it happens.
Mhm.
So they'll know kind of what to expect in their emotions. And some of that is a normal, response to the body growing, the biological part of it.
That's right.
Growing up, that was one of the things that was lacking. I don't know about you ladies,
Yeah.
but I grew up in a very cultural environment where mental illness was taboo,
Yeah.
especially in the Christian community,
Come
in the
on. That's
churches.
huge.
And that is huge
Mhm.
nowadays. Pray everything away. And sometimes,
Mhm.
I know God is able to do
Right. Most
exceedingly and
definitely.
abundantly
That's it. Yeah.
that we can think of, but at the same time, he gives wisdom and
Thank you.
understanding to
Right.
professionals like
Yeah.
yourself for us to seek assistance. So I'm extremely ecstatic that you've taken time
Mhm.
of your day to just educate our community because it's so important. One of the things with peer group changes is that I notice is the clothing,
Yeah.
the music that they listen
Oh
to.
wow, that's
Styles.
huge.
That
Yes.
was huge as I noticed my children changing things, and why do you need to know where I'm going? I'm the type of parent who, what, where, when, why,
Right.
how,
That's good.
Right.
Yeah.
and until this day, they're all adults, but it's something that I ask because you never
Yeah,
know
that's
what
And I
somebody
think-
else is going through.
That's
I
right.
think that's what we're missing as well, because parents tend to feel that because they're teenagers, yes, they do have independence and we need to give them that.
Mhm.
However, they still, and kids have told me that too, they still want structure,
Yes, that's huge.
whether you get on their nerves or not.
Mhm.
They still want structure. They still want to know you care enough about them
That's
to know
right.
where you're going, who you're hanging out with.
It makes a difference.
Oh,
Yeah.
It
absolutely.
makes a difference.
One of the questions I have is, can depression in children be prevented? That was a huge question. I've asked that before. I have a short snippet of notes, and I have children with family history of depression are also at higher risk of depression. Children who have parents with depression tend to have their first episode of depression earlier than children whose parents don't have the condition. Children from chaotic or conflicted families or children and teens who abuse substances like alcohol, drugs are also at greater risk of depression. So, can depression be prevented? With that explanation.
I believe none of us are exempt
That's true.
from
Right.
it.
That's true.
So, as human beings, if we're in a social world, we're going to be subject to the ups and the downs.
That's right. That's
So
right.
I don't think everybody or anybody can be exempt from
Right.
of it.
Right.
I think
That's
the
right.
question is, what are the coping skills
Thank
when you
you.
do,
That's it.
come encounter with that? And those coping skills need to be taught early on, not when they're going to middle school,
That's right.
not when they're starting their menses and what have you. Those coping skills need to happen way
That's
before
true.
then, even at preschool, because they have to
Yeah.
learn how to
That's
interact
right.
with kids, and they have to learn how to share and
That's right.
socialize then. And some of it is not going to go their way.
That's right.
It's like the person that just eats whatever and winds up with diabetes and high blood pressure.
Yeah.
If we don't educate and
Thank you.
learn, if our body's a temple, not only what we listen to, but what we put
That's
into our
right.
bodies, music, what we're watching,
it.
what we're eating,
Mhm.
all those things. Teaching has to start at an early
Early
age.
Has to.
And
Mhm.
then you mentioned that earlier as far as educating the parents, children too. Not all education has to be formal. That's one thing they need to
Yeah.
know, because the library at this day and time is still free for the resources,
Yes.
Yeah,
even
it
using the
is.
computer. So I feel like if we can look it up on our phones, we
Yeah.
can do that for
That's true.
everything else.
That's true.
We can also look up resources in helping to raise our children, or
Mhm.
parenting skills, or learning about the effects and impacts of drugs and depression.
That's right.
So
That's right.
don't let that be the barrier if you feel like it has to be a formal education, because it does not.
Yeah.
She's not saying get diagnosed off of Google. What
Please
she's
don't.
Right.
saying
No, not
is,
that.
Please don't. Yeah.
what she's saying is,
Exactly.
if there's a question
Thank you for
Yeah.
clarifying.
that you can always go online
Yes,
and
yes.
get some information to
Mhm.
ease what you're thinking could be, or if you
Correct.
need a resource,
Right.
you can go out there and look for it. So
Thank you.
another, you're welcome. I mean, technology nowadays, we have to be clear, because sometimes, people might say, well, they say,
No,
See?
Tammy
Yeah.
didn't
so
say
we
that.
want to be
Don't
clear.
believe
We're here
everything
to
online.
educate and inform. The last question that we wanted to attack was, how can parents seek help for their children? How, we were talking earlier, I know early on for one of my daughters, we didn't seek mental health. We sought group activities.
Yeah.
Children that looked like her, that acted like her, they kind of, to diagnose whether it was a learning disability, a
Right.
mental, and how she reacted to other children
Mhm.
in that setting, because sometimes kids are afraid to go to doctors,
That's true too.
or to express their feelings. So what can parents do to seek help for their children?
Well, they can start out with, talking to their medical professional, their doctors. Most families have doctors that they see, regularly on a regular basis, and that's the first place where they can start. And then, of course, if it's severe, if it's clinical, then their doctors then can refer them to a mental health professional if needed. So that would be the first place to start.
I would also encourage parents, if they're struggling with, different things, depression,
Right.
substance use, I would say seek help for yourself as well, because children tend to model what they see.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
One of the things that helped for my children, as myself and their dad both were substance abuse users, was those kind of groups, like the Al-Anon groups. Because even though we were seeking help, children are, like you said, they watch,
Yeah.
they go through depression as the parents are dealing with their mental issues. And it's important that kids have an outlet
Yes.
to express, because if they have a parent that is dealing with mental
Come on.
illness,
Come on.
addiction, and any other issue, it's kind of hard for the child to feel comfortable
Right.
because they see that their parent is struggling.
Right.
A lot of kids tend to feel like, my parent is going through too much, I don't want to add to it.
You don't want to be a
And
burden.
A burden, correct. So they
Yeah.
bottle it in,
Yeah.
and then, like you said, they go to they change their peer groups.
Mhm.
And that's when they start to pick up habits or
Yeah.
bad influences. Miss Robin?
Well, it's unethical as mental health professionals for us to see the children without having the families involved.
Yeah.
So we not only would have perhaps we might have a individual session with the child, but we have to have family therapy sessions for
Yeah.
this to effectively work. Because
right.
if we bring the child away and have the treatment with them and show them interventions, and
Yeah,
then
that's a good point.
without having the family, we place them back
Mhm.
off in that environment, then what good
Keep
is
the
it
cycle
doing?
going.
Yeah,
So
that's it.
The
It won't
cycle
work.
isn't broken
Right.
because nobody's learning. Nobody's, you're just,
The environment.
the environment
Mhm.
hasn't
It
changed.
has to change.
And one of the things that I love about Neutral Voices is our mindset.
Mhm.
Because we're raised, as African Americans a certain way. I don't know about you, but don't say what happens in the house stays in the house.
Right.
That's how we were raised. A
Mhm.
child is supposed to be seen and not heard.
Not heard.
All these things growing up, and we have to break the cycle
Come on.
somehow.
Come on.
So how is depression diagnosed in children? We were talking about before we came on air, one of the things with school starting right around the corner,
Yeah.
and I know teachers are frustrated with the system, as parents are as well, is that teachers tend to immediately label a child mental, having a mental disability
Right.
when it could be a learning
Come on.
disability.
Come on.
So one of the things that I wanted to know is, how can depression be diagnosed? Besides, let's say a parent has never been to the doctor here.
Mhm.
They're new to the area.
Right.
What should they be looking for?
Okay. Well, first, before I answer that question, I want to back up to resources. Another great resource that parents can seek out, or even the children, are school counselors. Don't forget the school counselors. So if you have a school counselor that you trust, that you can feel open with, or a favorite teacher, those are all great resources
Very
as
good.
well.
Yeah.
So please don't forget about your school guidance counselor.
Shout out to Miss McKinley. She was the best counselor for our children. And I mean, she was a lifesaver for a lot of issues and things that were going on in the house. And you're right. The school counselors know your children because they're there
Come
with
on.
them
Come on.
during the day. They may see something that you may not, so kind of link up with the school
Yes.
teachers, the guidance
Come on.
counselors, the principals. Don't shy away,
Yeah.
because this is, it takes a village to
It
raise a
does.
child.
Come on.
And that includes the school system. One of the things, if symptoms of depression in your child have lasted at least 2 weeks, schedule a visit with their doctor to make sure that there's no physical reasons for the symptoms. And that's just to make sure that they get proper
Come
treatment.
on. That's right.
Because like I said before, sometimes it could be an issue with OBGYN or
Yeah.
gastric
Come
or a
on.
thyroid imbalance. It could be so many other things. So it's really important that, we take our children to the
Yeah.
pediatrician on a regular basis.
Yes.
Make sure that they're being taken care of that way. A mental health evaluation should be done,
Yeah.
which is basically interviews with the parent, with the primary caregiver, with the child, and anybody associate, daycare person, other siblings, that kind of thing. It says that there are no specific medical or psychological tests that can clearly show depression. And when I was raising my children as a single parent, teachers always said, get a test for depression. And because I didn't know, I wasn't educated, I was taking whatever people were telling me. So it's really important that we educate ourselves, not only for ourselves, but so we can be the best
Come on.
us that we can be for
For the
our
kids.
children,
That's
for
it.
our community.
Come on.
So that way we can, just share the wealth, share the
Right.
love, help somebody else, right?
Please, yes.
Are there any other tips? One of the things I wanted to mention, because we were talking about mental health, was the new suicide hotline.
Yeah.
In the past, a lot of people would have to remember a 10-digit, number. Now it is simple. So for all of you out there who are struggling, who want to speak to somebody, You don't have to memorize a long number, and you don't have to call 911 any longer. The suicide prevention hotline has been changed to 988.
Yeah.
And you can call for a ear or anything. Also, with the T-Shirts for Teens campaign here in the city of Fort Wayne, we invite you to join this campaign as well to assist us in raising funds to have a T-shirt, a Live T-shirt in the hands of every teen from the ages of 10 to 24. So if you want to
Love
know
that.
more, please log on to Neutral Voices on Facebook.
I love
And I also wanted to make sure that Miss Crystal announced an upcoming event
that.
in her facility as well.
Yeah, so the Society of Black Mental Health Professionals, we are having a community mental health awareness and back to school event. Join us in the fight to end the stigma. So again, parents, you're looking for resources. We're going to have mental health agencies out there in the park. We're going to have resources for you to be able to get the help that you need for your children. So time will be August 13th. From 10 to 1. We'll start at McMillan. We'll walk from there to Weiser Park. And at Weiser Park is where all the festivities will take place, where we'll be giving away back to school supplies. So please come out, join us on that day. We are looking for you all to be there.
That is awesome. I believe Tamara also has an event coming up. Would you mind
Yes,
sharing?
It's the Black and Minority Healthcare and Mental Health Care Professionals
Yes.
event. It's a symposium, a showcase to encourage young people from 13 through adulthood. If you're interested in the medical profession, the mental health profession, please come out on Thursday, August the 4th from 5:30 to, I believe it's 8:30 at the Boys and Girls Club on Fairfield. And that is on Eventbrite, I believe.
Okay.
And then you guys also have the flyer.
Yes, also on Neutral
August 4th,
Voices,
yes.
August 4th. It's so amazing that we have so many resources here in Fort Wayne. There is no reason why we
No.
shouldn't seek help.
Come on.
A closed mouth don't get fed. I believe
Right.
we have a question.
Yes. The question goes into the development. I'm going to paraphrase it because it was a long question. But how do you distinguish from the maturation versus symptoms of depression? When a child is trying to find themselves, they was referring to teenagers finding themselves and changing their ways versus finding trouble spots for depression or things such as that. How do you distinguish the differences?
I would say, again, education is not always formal. And things like that, when kids are going into those preteen years and teen years, that's
Right.
something you can get off the shelf at the library and just kind of know the basics of it. When it starts getting to a point where they're not functioning day to day,
That's it.
that's when it's a difference in the problem. And then when you need to seek more professional help.
Yeah.
Right.
And I will say, love on the kids. Love on the kids
Please.
as soon as possible, and know that, let them know that you're a safe place
Amen.
and they're, their home.
Yeah, you'll be able to see the difference between natural maturation and signs of depression. As a parent, you'll know.
Oh, yeah.
You'll be able to determine that, and you'll know something is not right with your child. So there definitely is a clear difference. That's a good question. Very good question.
That's awesome. Thank you, ladies, again.
you.
Always a pleasure, as I am a huge advocate of mental health and children. So again, thank you all for staying tuned with us here at Neutral Voices for Your Mental Health Matters. Protect your mind and seek help if you need help. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.